I wrote this morning about reading, and if we don't help people be readers, then we won't have anybody to write for. But also, we writers got to be readers if we're going to be good writers. And it reminded me of a book I once read and then read it again, and it was called "How to Read a Book" by Mortimer Adler. And I took that book with me to a pastor's retreat, and I had left it somewhere in my room and or the bathroom maybe, and one of the other guys found it and brought it out and was like, like a lot of Airbnbs will have bookshelves where they got books you can read. He brought it out and was making fun of it. He was like, "Look, they got this book here. It's called How to Read a Book. How stupid is that? You can't even read a book called How to Read a Book unless you already know how to read a book. So you don't need to read a book about how to read a book if you can read a book about how to read a book." I had to admit, well, that's mine, because reading a book is so much more than just sitting down and reading the words on the page. I first heard about Mortimer Adler's book from John Piper, a preacher, a pastor, who was talking about that book in the context of Bible study. And he thought it was a great book to read for people that want to study the Bible. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the main points from how to read a book, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. And also, if it piques your interest, you'll go and get that book and apply some of it. So, Mortimer Adler, one of
Adler.
two Adlers I admire, the other one being the psychologist Alfred Adler. Now, I'm 52 years old, and at this point in my life, I don't feel obligated to finish a book. If I'm reading a book and it really is just not grabbing me, I've already realized that life is too short, but I don't want it to be that I don't read it because it's too hard. If a book is hard, but I sense that the point of the book is going to be fruitful for me and help me and change me in some way, then I see it as a challenge. And in fact, I think there's hardly anything more effective than reading a book that's too hard for you when it comes to developing cognitive ability. So I would say give up on it because it's just not a good book, and you already got the point of it. And a lot of books they get the point out there in the first two or three chapters, and then the rest of it you really don't necessarily have to read, and that's a good lesson for all of us too, by the way. So Adler says that not all reading is the same kind of reading, and we don't always use the same kind of reading for every book or for every article or whatever. So he talks about, this reminds me of you, Dr. Sarah, because he talks about reading levels in a similar way that you talk about learning levels when you're quoting Bloom's taxonomy and things like that. And he doesn't, I don't remember him mentioning Bloom, but he definitely talks about different reading levels. So level one is basic reading. This is knowing the words, following the sentences. And most people, this is what they mean when they say they read a book. Reading and zoning out and not being able to remember what you read necessarily. It could be that you read it and you make sure that you know what it says, that you know what the words are. And it could be that that's level two, and level one would be the kind of reading where you don't necessarily remember it. You're not trying to remember it necessarily. But in this level one, you're you're at least trying to make sure that you're paying attention. If your mind wanders, you go back and read it again. That's level one, knowing the words. Level two, you would read that way, but before you do, you would skim it first, so that you're basically giving yourself an overview. So you take a look at the table of contents and you consider the table of contents, You read the back of the book, you read the introduction, you read the preface, you even go and read the conclusion of the book. This is for books that, you know, it doesn't ruin anything. It's a nonfiction book, you know, but you go read the conclusion of the book. You flip through the chapters. Maybe you read the first paragraph and last paragraph of each chapter. I have a really hard book I'm reading right now that I really appreciate. Every chapter has a summary. It's been very, very helpful for me. And you think about, you ask yourself, what is this book about, and is it worth my time? And you size the thing up. That's level 2. Level 3, read it like a conversation. This is really where Adler starts to get very helpful. And this is where I like to start if I'm applying this to Bible. So read it like a conversation. So it's not a passive thing that you're doing in this case. It's a conversation. So you've got 4 questions when you're reading level 3. What is the book about? What is the author saying? Do I agree? And why does it matter? What's the book about? What's the author saying? Do I agree? And why does it matter? And this is where I really like a paper book, because I want to underline, I want to put boxes around things, I want to circle things, I want to write in the margins. You can do that with at least I know with my iPad, if I'm reading the Kindle app on iPad, you can make comments, you can highlight, and in some ways it's nice because you can use different colors, and then the highlights will be retrievable. So that's kind of cool. But for my brain, it really helps to have a pen and underline on the paper with that pen and write questions and challenge the author. If he says something or she says something I don't agree with, write in the margin why I'm not sure I agree. A lot of people won't do this because they just don't really want to read a book they don't already agree with. And there may be a phase of life or growth where maybe that's necessary for you. It's just too confusing or something. But I think you don't want to get stuck there. You want to be able to read stuff you don't agree with, because that's a really good way to sharpen your thinking, your arguments, your mind. And that leads to level 4, which is compare books. So read more than one book on a topic. Compare ideas, notice the differences, and form your own thinking. And now you're not being a consumer. Richard brought this up in the comments on my article this morning about microwave learning. And I'm guilty of it too. And social media makes it very, very, very easy to type in a topic and then get someone's opinion on it real quick. And then the algorithm knows, oh, he likes that, she likes that opinion. I'm going to give them nothing but that. And frankly, I don't know how we learn anything from social media, because there's so much certainty without backing up, what people are saying. And someone is just as certain over here as they are over here, and neither one of them have really any evidence. So I like books, because once someone's written a book, they've studied it for a long time. They've got to cite sources. They've got to pass a copyright. It wasn't necessarily optimized for click-through rate. Even though there's some things we can learn about that, when writing books, about how to keep people reading. Some really hard books that I find worth reading, even though they're hard, are one of my favorites is A Failure of Nerve by Edwin Friedman. A bunch of people, a bunch of people have written books based on his idea that are a lot simpler and easier. Yeah, Liana, the Bible is definitely. That's how you know someone's got a grand idea when a whole bunch of people are trying to write easier books about it. Here's what Friedman is saying, but in a way that the average person can understand. I say go to Friedman because it's not so easy to read, and that's part of the point. Anything by Nassim Taleb, I don't agree with everything that he says. He's an economist, but he coined some phrases like I don't know if he coined Black Swan, but he uses the he's the person I think of right now when I hear that term, which is basically means the thing that you don't expect to happen that can still happen, like having your house burned down, right, Sarah? A Black Swan event. The thing you can't really plan for, and his big word that I really really love, the one that I really think of when I think of him is anti-fragile. If you really want to get an idea across, invent some language for it, coin a term. Anti-fragile is like resilience, but more. Resilient things can bounce back to what they were after they take a hit. Something anti-fragile, uh, it 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 gets better from it. I can't. I guess I've used all my words today because I can't think of the word I want to use for it. But it improves it. It's like your muscles. You by stressing them, they get stronger, and your bones, but not your china. In my article today was just I was in grad school when I really started to follow Jesus, and I picked up Mere Christianity and read it like it was Dick and Jane. I wasn't in graduate school reading all the time. I tried to read it again, and I was like, this is hard. I was in graduate school reading
Hmm.
all day at the time. So it also can shrink, but I don't. But it's kind of like muscles. They say once you grow them, they're easy to grow back to rebuild when you need to. I think the brain is the same way. I mean, bearing any kind of trauma or event, I think just when it comes to just pure atrophy, I think the brain can be built back fairly well to easily to where it was. But once you're starting to read multiple books on a topic and you're starting to pick ones that you know you're not going to agree with, and you approach it seeking truth rather than certainty with a degree of openness, then you're really ready to learn, and you're really going to develop an expertise on a topic. And you have to have discernment. You have to know your limits. You have to know where you struggle with your own doubts and things like that, so that you can just also at the same time follow Paul's words to the Philippians to whatever's good, whatever's true, whatever's noble. Set your mind on these things.